Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of ZB's Horsepower Talk. As always, I'm ZB, Zack Brown, and with me, as always, to give the crew chief side of things, my dad, former 410 crew chief and mechanic, Jeff Brown. Dad, we're getting into another week. Not a lot of racing, just finished up the Chili Bowl, so talking a little bit about that. Some news going on throughout motorsports, and we'll dive in some fun top fives that we got, and I got a trivia question for you on this one as well to end the episode. So hopefully you're ready, and I think you should probably do pretty good on this one.
Yeah, cool. Chili Bowl, if you don't know, it is for the four-cylinder midget class. It is indoors in Tulsa, Oklahoma in January, because otherwise you're not going to be racing anything in Tulsa in January. I think they had almost 300 cars throughout the whole week. It goes everywhere from, local dirt track guys, NASCAR superstars. Kyle Larson was there. Ricky Stenhouse was running. Uh, you know, Former World of Outlaw champ Sammy Swindell. I don't know how old he is now, but he's still running. He's still
Got to be.
dancing
He's
and
got to
hard.
be in his 70s.
Oh, I would think so. And hats off to Logan Seavey. He won. That's his second straight Chili Bowl win.
Yep, back to back.
Yeah, and that's almost unheard of winning that race 2 years in a row. So congrats to him.
Didn't
I
Christopher Bell
actually
do
had
it
to
three
look
years in
him
a
up
row?
because I wasn't 100% sure what all he raced. I know he runs the part-time outlaw schedule for Chase Briscoe Racing. So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
know I seen him in the
Yeah, that's where I've
410s.
seen that's where I've seen the name and everything. Didn't Christopher Bell win like three in a row or something?
Yeah, it could be. I'm not sure.
Well, the one thing we you did mention, you kind of touched on, Kyle Larson was a late race entry in that, and didn't have the luck that he was expecting. Flipped a few times, and I'm sure Rick Hendrick was cringing when he saw Larson flip, not just the first, but the second time as well. So that goes to tell you, anybody can win this race. Anybody can crash in this race. It's the best of the best. Kicks off your season, and it's such a historic race for the midget racing and the dirt racing community.
Yeah, the one nice thing is the cars aren't going super fast on that small track, and those cars are so light. They can actually flip and roll up, and they really don't do any damage. I've seen them roll over, they push them back over, and start them off again. They keep on going, so it makes it a little easier. It's not like you're crashing one at Eldora or something.
Well, going over some more of the news in the motorsports world, Kyle Larson, he got his first win of 2024. He won the Tulsa Shootout. So I don't know how much you know about that. I believe it's a late model race they have out in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Yeah, I'm wondering where in the world they ran that in January in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
I'm not sure, but it can't be much colder than it has been over where I'm at, and randomly it's cold where you. And it kind of transitions nicely. What I wanted to bring up a fun
Oh
topic.
no, he won the Wild West Shootout in Arizona.
Okay, well, I'm staying corrected on my bad. So, okay, that's a little warmer. But, anyways, talking about cold weather, it's been cold as hell over here. It's actually cold where you are in Florida. It's pretty crazy. Now, from a mechanic and a crew chief that's worked on these cars for a long time, how do you go in about those type of races in those cold climates? You have Lincoln Speedway coming up here in about 2 months. They do the Icebreaker 30. How do you prepare for that, and how do you have that car ready for those cold conditions?
Well, the biggest issue is going to be when you have an all aluminum engine. As they are now at a normal temperature, your valve adjustment might be 4 thousandths of an inch. Say it's 70 degrees. So you're talking, as the engines run and they get hot, they expand. So when at the engine's up to the operating temperature, your valve adjustment might be 20 thousandths. So put that at 40 degrees, your valve adjustment might be at zero when you first start those things. So it's very important to have your fluids heated, the block heated. Things are a little different now. They have all these heaters. They plug into the radiator, actually circulate warm water, and they'll get the thing up to about 170 degrees just sitting there. We have oil heaters. We used to throw a blanket over the hood and blow a torpedo heater in on the things, which you could get those things up. You get some temperature in them right off the bat. A lot of times you even want to block off the radiator. They don't run fans on the sprint cars or anything, so you just take some tape, block off the radiator, try to keep. You want to keep a fine balance. You want the thing to run 180, 200 degrees, but you don't want it to get hot. You don't want it to be cold. And also importantly, we had this happen once before. We got teams heading down to Florida. If they had an engine, say they ran at the end of last year and had it in the shop, and they go and put it in the trailer, better make sure you have antifreeze in that engine, because we have seen them freeze in the trailer and break the block.
Yeah, yeah. So that's for a sprint car specifically. Do you know how they would do it differently with NASCARs? I mean, it's completely different setup, engine, all of that. Similar strategies they could use with the blankets, the heaters, or is it just kind of way different since it's a stock car?
I do know in NASCAR they do have a plug-in heater similar to what the sprint cars are going to have.
Okay.
They'll go as far as they might even, especially like in qualifying, they'll probably go to a slightly lighter gear oil, just because more viscosity for being so much colder. Especially if you're only going to run a couple laps for time trials. Those guys will come out for anything that's possible just to gain a couple thousandths. The sprint car guys probably are not going to do much of that.
Yeah.
Possibly may run a little bit lighter engine oil, but they, NASCAR guys may change the grease in their wheel bearings and things like that just to keep things going like that. I've seen tire heaters. You don't really see that in NASCAR anywhere. Formula One guys, they'll have the tires actually heated when they're sitting, in the pit area. I'm not sure if IndyCar does that or not. So they already have the little bit of temperature in the tires right before they go out. But there's a lot of things they can do to, keep all that going on, and try to, being that you want to get it up to temperature as fast as you possibly can and safe as you possibly can.
Yeah. So I'm guessing there's a certain temperature that the track crews look at and say, yeah, we're not going to race below this temperature. And I'm going to assume it's probably around 32 degrees. You can't really have it below freezing. And we saw sub-zero temperatures at Kansas City for the playoff game this weekend. I would say there's no chance you can race NASCAR or dirt racing or any of that in those type of sub-zero conditions.
No, I don't think so. The track's going to be frozen. You get any kind of moisture at all, it's going to be instant ice. Just out of a safety perspective, it's just you're never going to be able to race in anything like that. We always had a rule of thumb in Pennsylvania: if it was 45 degrees, we were racing.
Sorry for the interruption, guys, but I got to give a shout out to our sponsor and partner, betstamp. Sports betting has rapidly risen in popularity, and I want to connect you all with an opportunity to get started and get ahead. Having multiple sportsbook accounts is the simplest way to maximize your profits, and there's never been a better time to sign up than now. When you visit my page, signupexpert.com/ZB, you'll be connected to all the sportsbooks in your region, along with a review of each platform and its unique benefits. All these sportsbooks have valuable sign-up offers for new users, and when you register through my link, you'll be automatically receive the top offer at each one. When you use multiple sportsbooks, you ensure that you can always access the best available odds, which is key to successful sports betting. If you want to take advantage of these benefits and support this brand, please consider signing up for your next sportsbook at signupexpert.com/ZB. Back to the show.
News out of John Force Racing is that Austin Prock will be replacing Robert Height for at least part of the year, driving the Cornwell Tools funny car. I know that they said Robert had some health issues going on right now, and best of health to him, and hopefully he recovers soon and be able to get back in the car. But it's pretty exciting news. Austin Prock, his dad Jimmy Prock, and I believe it's his older brother are both as co-crew chiefs or whatever they call them on the funny cars on that deal. So we got a whole family affair going on for the funny car, It did not mention in the article because he's been running Top Fuel for John Force, and it didn't mention whether that's going to be sitting, not happening at all this year.
Is it possible for him to do double duty?
No, I don't believe they. I don't think they allow that in NHRA. Okay. I could be wrong on that. You can do double duty, but you can't do it in 2 pro classes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, because that would be pretty tough. But, Robert Height, gets well. Does he, does Jimmy or Austin Prock get back into Top Fuel? Does he stay in the funny car? None of that has been all set, but luckily all the sponsors with Chevrolet and Auto Club and Cornwell Tools and all their major sponsors were cool with. Robert Height's a champion. They signed on having him, so it worked out well for them. So it'd be interesting to see. Be interesting to see how he does in a funny car. That's it's a big difference. You're going from a 300 inch wheelbase car to 100 and some wheelbase car with the same amount of horsepower.
And that's what I was going to ask. How much of a transition will it be from him running the Top Fuel going into a funny car, and what difference will he have to really do in those cars?
Yeah, well, he's gonna have to drive them a little more. You got that 300 inch wheelbase. It's basically a missile. It's going to go wherever you point it for the most part. They don't react. And then you get that short wheelbase car, like I said, they have the same power plant, so they're making the same amount of horsepower. They have the same tires on it. Just show everything, into a 15-foot car. The short wheelbase, you're going to react on the steering wheels a lot more. They're going to be moving around. And it's also, he's going to be behind the engine for the first time. Top Fuel, the engine's behind the driver.
Yep.
You got 11,000 horsepower sitting there right in front of you. I tell you, they're braver than I am. I can tell you that.
Well, it'll be interesting for sure, and it probably comes down to how long Robert Height's going to be out, how Austin Prock's doing in point standings, whether they just let him ride it out for the rest of the year. If it's not a significant amount of time, Robert Height's able to get back into it. Does he apply for a medical waiver like they do in NASCAR? It just kind of all depends how much he misses this year, and also, again, how the team will be performing this year. So definitely that's a big storyline going into the NHRA season, as we are, a little over a month, about 6-7 weeks away from
I think beginning of March they start down here in Gainesville, Florida.
Yeah, so it'll be definitely interesting for sure. But, hopefully thoughts and prayers out to Robert Height. Hopefully he gets better and it makes a great comeback, great champion in the sport. They definitely need him, but awesome for Austin Prock having this opportunity. And hey, if he does pretty well, maybe he goes full time in a funny car. Who knows?
Yeah,
we'll see.
Maybe they run 3 funny cars this year, not in one Top Fuel dragster. So I mean, they have the equipment. John Force builds all his own stuff, so it's not like he doesn't have the equipment. They could do whatever they need to do.
Yeah.
So if he's running well and is in the point deal, I think you would be foolish to pull him out. Because. And also Robert Height has to do is get into the top, whatever it is, 10 by the end of the and he's a great driver. All you win a couple of races, he can probably get back in the top, depending on how long he's out, of course.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that really kind of goes over the news we had, and I'm sure there'll be some more headlines coming up. ARCA Series had, like I said, I've touched on it before. They finished up their testing for Daytona next month. So that'll be really cool to see, especially with our guest from the live show, Caleb Costner, see how he does. I know it was a great experience for him. I was kind of texting him and stuff, seeing how everything was going. He said it was a little wet down there, so they kind of threw off the schedule a little bit more than they had, but he had a blast. They learned a lot, and go back to the shop, figure things out, and come out ready here in a month. So, we're excited for that. But everybody's been wondering when we're going to do this part, and we kind of posted around, and some people had some insights for this. So thank you for anybody that commented about this next part. We are continuing our top 5, a little bit of fun this year, something different. And so let's kick it off. We are doing in our opinion, the top 5 dirt racers of all time. And it's from any era. So that is easy to do, of course. Why not? So going from 5 to 1, Dad, we're going to start with you. Who is in your top 5 dirt racers of all time? And if you want to give an honorable mention, feel free to do that because I've got 1 or 2 honorable mentions as well.
You could probably have 100 honorable mentions on this thing. So it's, we want to point out this is not necessarily sprint car drivers. These are dirt racers of all time. There may be a couple of these I'm a little bit of a homer on, but at number 5, I have Johnny Mackison Sr. For those who do not know, he and my dad started out together in the 50s running the dirt tracks around Pennsylvania. And I'm going to say he was probably the first big star in Pennsylvania. It was one of the things, he was one of the guys, all the girls like Johnny Mackison Sr. He was, he's a great racer. They won a ton of races. Dad started off to be the driver. He wasn't very good, put Johnny in it. And he just lit it up after that. So I'm going to give it to him, even, there's so many could be on this list. At number 4, I went with Jonathan Davenport, the Superman, in the late models. There's just not a huge late model fan, but the top series late model guys, they put on a great race. And this guy is in contention every week, every race. I haven't followed it enough that I don't really know if there's ever been like a big superstar before him that I could think of. I'm sure there has been. But as far as that, I have him. Number 3, I don't believe I've ever seen him race in person, is Jan Opperman. He was probably the 60s and early 70s, so I'd probably seen him when I was a little kid, but I didn't know who he was, running sprint cars. I started out, in Pennsylvania, but then he ended up traveling, cross country, and just he was like the first hammer down hard racer. Talking about little wings and the whole deal and that whole thing.
What era was that?
What's that?
What era was that in?
I'm going to say 60s and early 70s.
Okay.
He even, at some point, I know he had some tests in an IndyCar at Indy. I don't know if he ever actually qualified for the race or not. But, he was, at the time, he was the dirt racer everybody wanted to beat and needed to beat.
Yep.
So these next 2 were tough. They could almost go either way. But at number 2, I got an era before Jan Opperman. I have A.J. Foyt.
Okay.
People think of A.J. Foyt, IndyCar. They forget he raced sprint cars, champ cars, dirt cars. At one time back, in the 60s, the path to Indy was running sprint cars. Then you would go to the USAC champ cars, He ran the Pennsylvania tracks. He ran Williams Grove with like Mario Andretti, all those guys. You don't think of those as dirt racers, but they were absolutely amazing dirt racers.
So he and Pop came across paths quite a bit then.
Well, I'm sure they did, but they kind of ran different cars back then.
Okay.
Dad with Johnny had the jalopies or whatever they wanted to call them, and then the money back then in Pennsylvania was in modifieds. Sprint cars weren't that big of a deal.
Yeah.
So the number 1, of course, you got to put him on any top 5 list, dirt racers. King of the Outlaws, Steve Kinser. Who can argue with his success? Yes, he was with Carl Kins for most of the time. But yes, it takes a great driver, great mechanic. But the guy won, 600 World of Outlaw A main features. I have never seen anybody with car control like Steve Kinser. It's one of the... He was so determined. And for a big, like you see drivers now, like Kyle Larson weighs about 140 pounds. Steve Kinser got 100 pounds on him.
Yeah, he's a big guy.
Big, strong guy. I know he was a champion, high school champion wrestler, the whole deal. So, he just could wheel that car like nobody else.
And it would piss us off all the time. We're like, there is no way he's not cheating or anything. That's just how good he was, how smooth he was driving this corner. And those PA Posse tracks, he's in the all-time win list on those.
Yeah, that's
he doesn't
crazy.
race them.
He'll run in
He
there
doesn't
3
race
times
them
a
every week.
year.
Yes, exactly. So it's insane.
Quick little story. There was one time we were racing down in Florida, and we were with Wolfgang, which he would be an honorable mention on my list, I guess, if you want to put it that way. But it was just warm-ups, and it was Wolfgang and Steve Kinzer running, and I don't want to say we were running at the Tampa Fairgrounds. I could be wrong on this, but they ran warm-ups 5 or 6 laps side by side. Neither one of them moved an inch off of each. I mean, they were just right rear to left rear the whole time, and just it was almost like it was just fun for them. They wanted to see how long they could run side by side, and it was with the whole entire warm-ups. The cars never moved an inch. Just the amount of car control was just unreal with those guys.
That's yeah. So obviously there's people on the list I've never heard of before that you mentioned. And this is my list. My honorable mention is Davenport. It was tough if I wanted him on here. I mean, one of the best late model racers, and he was able to get opportunities in NASCAR. Now he possibly going to get opportunities coming up in more stock car races too. He got to race in SRX as well, and did great. Did he? He won. He won an SRX. He won a dirt race in SRX, I believe.
Did he win SRX or did he get second?
I think he won. Yeah, I think he freaking won that race. Yeah. So yeah, that's obviously a huge honorable mention. I like the.
I had him in. I took him out. I had him in. I took him out.
Yeah,
I wanted to put a late model driver in there.
Yeah, I do have a late model driver in here, but I am pretty sprint car specific, I guess you could say, in this one. And you could probably guess who I would think of. So at number 5, he's still racing. Talk about somebody that's on all-time win lists in these tracks he doesn't race at every single week. This dude has amazing car control and probably the best outlaw racer on the bottom. So smooth, so patient in the races. Definitely, I guess he's probably in the Dirt Racing Hall of Fame. If not, he's about to be, or Sprint Car Hall of Fame.
I think he is.
But you know what I'm talking about. Donnie Schatz at number 5.
Yeah.
So that was hard to keep him off the list. As much success as he's had, he's had a couple down years lately, but his down years he still finishes top 5 of the point standings. I mean, that's still pretty good. The next driver, and you could probably guess who else I have on here. And Pop actually thinks he is one of the best, if not the best, dirt racers or just general racers of all time. When I talked to him last year's interview. Kyle Larson is my number 4. 2-time Knoxville national champion now. Wheels anything you could think of. Kind of sucked at the Chili Bowl last week, but I mean things happen there.
Fast, just crashed.
Yeah, things happen there. He's won a Chili Bowl. He's won pretty much everything you could think of, especially the year he got kicked out of NASCAR. That year and the year after, he just started whipping everybody.
Oh, hang on. There we go.
And as Dad disappeared,
I've got a cat that wants to decide to play with the cables.
So if anybody's listening to this, Dad disappeared for 5 seconds, so it's okay. It's all right. There's crises that happen here. We take care of it. Yeah. But yes, Kyle Larson, number 4 on my list. And at number 3, I'm surprised you didn't have him on your list and kind of played a little bit favoritism here. You've worked on this car. You've seen this guy firsthand. One of the best racers of all time, and he didn't even race full time in the Outlaw Series. And correct me if I'm wrong, but he won over half of the Outlaw races in a single season. Didn't even participate in every single Outlaw race, but went out there, would whip them. Between you, Davey, and Pop, it was just a tremendous combination with them. Doug Wolfgang's my number 3.
Well, it wasn't that we won half the Outlaw races. We raced 110 times and had 55 wins.
Okay, yeah.
And I think 40-some seconds.
Yeah, not too shabby. Yes, and so yeah.
I had him between him and Davenport on my list. I took them all on and off 3 or 4 times.
I'm surprised you didn't have him on there. And Wolfgang loves doing interviews, in case anybody was wondering. Just clearly loves it, just like Pop loves interviews too. Just obviously wants to get bombarded by Flow Racing at the high limit races last year nobody that knows, if you watch any of the high limit races, I think they were in Indiana or something that wasn't too far from him. He drove down a couple hours and they just shoved a camera in his face, and he was just so excited about that. Just like, he's like, please leave me alone.
Yeah, I can remember it was Bruce Ellis wrote for Open Wheel magazine, and Wolfgang didn't want to do an interview, and finally he's like, yeah, what you've been writing hasn't pissed me off too much lately, so I'll give you the interview.
All right, so Doug Wolfgang at number 3 for me, and at number 2, here's my late model guy. I'm putting him one of the best of all time, and his mentality reminds me of Tony Stewart, how Tony Stewart is, or at least was. Tony's kind of calmed down a little bit since taking ownership, but Scott Bloomquist, number 2. Just, if anybody watches any interviews with him,
I forgot about Bloomquist.
He's just like, listen, and he has the kind of that Ricky Bobby thing. He's like, yeah, I wake up and I piss excellence, and and there's ones where they send him to the back. I forget what exactly it was, some sort of penalty, and the officials sent him to the back, and they were like, so what do you think about that? He's like, oh, they sent me to the back. I knew it was over then, and I was like, I was going to drive the shit out of that thing. And his interviews are flawless. Great late model racer. I think if I'm not mistaken, and I apologize if it's not this guy, but he has cancer, or at least was battling cancer at some point. I
think he had some kind of illness. I know he's been racing.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So my number 1 is going to be the same as yours, Dad. How can you go against the guy that is the king of sprint car racing? And I was lucky enough to see him towards the end of his career. Awesome driver. Seems like a really great guy. I don't think I've ever really met him, but seems like pretty cool guy. I don't really know. You probably know more than I do. I don't really know anything.
Yeah, until he and Sammy would get into it, which would happen,
Sammy got into it with everybody. So, I mean, that didn't take much. But, yeah, how can you deny the king, Steve Kinser? All those wins, I don't even need to explain it. His resume speaks volume for what he did. So
yeah, for the longest time on the Outlaws, on the 2-day shows, they did not count the preliminary nights as an outlaw win. So at one point he had 200 and some outlaw wins, and they were just the second night.
Yeah.
So I think when they factor that all in, it's well over 400 or some kind of crazy.
Yeah, that's pretty insane. So there's our top 5 this week. So anybody listening right now, prepare for next week. And I haven't even told you what we're doing next week. So, all right. So we did top 5 dirt racers. Let's do top 5 NASCAR drivers of all time. And that's going to be controversial.
Yeah, that's not any easier to narrow that one down.
So I've actually already wrote my 5 down. But yeah, for next week, we're going to do top 5 NASCAR drivers of all time. So one last thing I want to end with, Dad. Can you give the list of the 5 oldest current NASCAR tracks, ones that are currently racing on? Oldest at number 1, and then less oldest, but still old, at number 5.
Martinsville.
Number 1, 1949 was the first race.
Darlington.
Darlington's number 2. 1950 was the first race. You're on a roll.
Daytona,
number 5, 1959 was the first race.
I figured I was probably going to be pushing that one.
You got 3 and 4 left.
Wow.
Richmond is number 3, 1953 was the first race. I will be shocked if you get number 4. This one actually shocked me.
North Wilkesboro?
No.
Pocono?
No, that was in the 60s. I think it was actually exactly 1960.
And they're still running it today.
Yes.
I would have said Rockingham, probably.
I will give you a hint. Let's just say Jeff Gordon and Tony Stewart have had a lot of success here.
Wow.
Well, I narrowed it down for you. And Chase Elliott does pretty well here, too.
Phoenix?
No. All right. They also make right turns.
Oh, Watkins Glen.
Watkins Glen, number 4.
I wouldn't have pictured Watkins Glen.
1957 was
No
the
kidding.
first
That's
race.
wild.
Yeah, so I don't know if they race there every year, but that is the oldest track that they started out racing, and they are currently racing. So that was a little fun little trivia there.
That was a surprise on that one.
Yeah, that was one I was surprised with. One quick thing I want to end with. Did you know that there is one NASCAR Cup Series race, was currently the NASCAR Cup Series, that raced at our home track, Williams Grove Speedway?
I did not know that. I know they raced at Lincoln Speedway.
June 27th, 1954, there were 41 cars, and Herb Thomas was the winner.
Okay. That's
and a
very
1954 Hudson.
Cool.
And that was a significantly slower speed than the it was a 100-mile race, and the average speed for that race was 51 miles an hour. That's a little slower than sprint cars run now.
A little bit, yeah.
So yeah, I thought that was a little fun little tidbit there. So yeah, that does it for episode 2 of season 2. Make sure you guys hit that subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening to it, make sure you share. We're on Apple Podcasts, anywhere you get your podcasts, and follow on all social media platforms. Make sure you keep following, because we'll drop those top 5s and see what you guys think for top 5s. Give us in the comments what else are other things you want us to talk about, and what maybe we should quiz each other on too. Like to have these surprise trivia things. It's a lot of fun. Brings a lot of interesting facts to the show. So, all right, Dad. Till next week, we will get back to it then.
All right. See you then.